If you really stop and listen to everyday English for just 1 minute, you'll notice something strange. There's one word that keeps appearing again and again, in almost every conversation, in messages, in movies, in podcasts, in daily life. It's a tiny word, only 3 letters, but it carries a huge amount of meaning. Native speakers use it so automatically that they don't even realize how often it shows up. You get messages, you get home, you get tired, you get paid, you get excited, you get it, and if that word feels blurry or confusing in your head, English can start sounding fast and overwhelming. But here's the interesting part. The moment this word becomes clear, conversations suddenly slow down. They feel lighter, more predictable, more human.
Yeah, and what's funny is learners usually think the difficult part of English is big vocabulary or complicated grammar, but sometimes the real key is understanding the small everyday words that glue conversations together. Get is one of those words. It's like a secret shortcut native speakers share without talking about it. Once you hear how it works, you start noticing patterns everywhere. You begin recognizing meaning without translating in your head. And that's the moment English stops feeling like a puzzle and starts feeling like communication. So today we're not just explaining a verb, we're opening a door into how real spoken English actually flows.
And by the end of this episode, you're going to catch yourself smiling when you hear it. Someone will say get in a movie or a conversation, and instead of missing the meaning, your brain will go, "Oh, I get it." And that small moment of clarity is powerful, because it builds confidence. It reminds you that English isn't about memorizing thousands of rules. It's about recognizing patterns that real people use every day. And today we're focusing on one of the most important patterns in spoken English.
Hey, everyone, welcome back to the Real Conversations English podcast. Wherever you're listening from right now, maybe you're walking, commuting, cooking, studying, or just taking a quiet break, we're really glad you chose to spend a few minutes with us. This space is all about learning English in a way that feels natural and human. No pressure, no heavy classroom energy, just real conversation that helps you slowly absorb how English actually sounds in everyday life. Think of this like sitting at a cafe table with us, listening in on a relaxed conversation, and picking up English without forcing it.
Yeah, and that's something we care about a lot. Many people learn English for years but still feel nervous in real conversations because textbook English and real-life English don't always match. The rhythm is different, the vocabulary is different, and native speakers tend to simplify everything. We shorten words, we reuse the same verbs in dozens of situations, and we rely heavily on patterns instead of complicated structures. This podcast is about helping you hear those patterns clearly so your brain starts recognizing them automatically. When that happens, listening becomes easier and speaking feels less stressful.
Exactly. And today we're focusing on a perfect example of that idea, one small verb that appears everywhere in spoken English. It's one of those words that beginners hear constantly but rarely feel confident using. And once you understand how flexible it is, it's like unlocking a cheat code for conversation. Suddenly you can express more ideas with fewer words. You don't need advanced vocabulary to sound natural. You just need to understand how everyday English builds meaning using simple tools.
So here's where things start getting interesting, because the word get has this reputation of being confusing, almost like a messy verb that does too many jobs. A lot of learners hear it in 100 different situations and think, how can one word mean so many things? But when you zoom out and look at how it behaves in real conversations, you realize it's not chaos, it's actually built on a few very simple ideas that repeat over and over. Native speakers aren't juggling dozens of meanings in their heads. We're just using a flexible shortcut that adapts to context.
And what makes this powerful is that English naturally prefers efficiency. Instead of inventing a new verb for every tiny situation, spoken English recycles the same core verbs again and again. That's why get shows up everywhere. You get a message, you get tired, you get home, you get the joke. On the surface those look like different meanings, but underneath they follow the same logic. Something comes to you, something changes inside you, you reach a place, or clarity arrives in your mind.
Exactly. And this is where English becomes less about memorizing translations and more about recognizing movement. Get is a verb of transition. Something moves toward you, or you move toward a new state. You weren't tired, and then you get tired. You weren't home, and then you get home. You didn't understand, and then you get it. It's almost like the word marks a shift, a before and after moment. And native speakers rely on that sense of movement because it makes communication fast.
And when learners internalize that idea, something really important happens. Listening becomes smoother. Instead of trying to decode each sentence word by word, your brain starts recognizing the function of get automatically. You hear it and think, okay, something changed, or something arrived, or understanding happened. That mental shortcut reduces effort. And when effort drops, comprehension rises. It's one of those small shifts that quietly upgrades your relationship with the language. Let's start with the meaning that probably appears the most in daily life, and that's when get means receiving something. This is the version of the word that quietly runs through modern communication. Messages, emails, notifications, invitations, news, our days are full of things coming toward us, and English almost always uses get to talk about that movement. What's interesting is how invisible it feels to native speakers. We don't think of it as vocabulary. We think of it as air. If I say, "Did you get my message?" there's no effort in that sentence. It's automatic. It's friendly. It's casual. And that casual tone is important, because spoken English tends to choose the simplest path available.
Yeah, and you can really feel the difference when you compare it to more formal verbs. If someone says, "I received your message," it technically means the same thing, but it creates emotional distance. It sounds official, almost like paperwork. In real conversations, people want warmth and speed. So we say, "I got your message," or even shorter, "Got it." And that phrase, "got it," is everywhere. It doesn't just mean you received something. Sometimes it means you understand. Sometimes it means you acknowledge information. It's a tiny phrase doing a lot of social work in conversations, keeping everything moving smoothly.
And that's why learners shouldn't underestimate how powerful simple verbs are. There's a temptation to search for advanced vocabulary because it feels impressive, but natural English isn't built on impressive words. It's built on shared habits. Native speakers reuse the same small verbs thousands of times a day. You get a text from a friend. You get an email from work. You get a package at your door. You get news that makes you smile or worry. These aren't rare situations, they're daily life.
Another thing I love about this meaning is how flexible it is emotionally. You can say, "I got good news," and there's excitement inside that sentence. Or you can say, "I got bad news," and the tone changes completely, but the structure stays the same. The verb doesn't need to change because the emotion lives in the noun that follows. That's efficient communication. English lets the same skeleton carry different feelings, and listeners understand instantly. One of the most human uses of get is when it talks about change, especially changes that happen inside us. This is where the word stops being mechanical and starts becoming emotional. When we say get in this sense, we're describing a shift from one state to another. You weren't tired, and then you get tired. You weren't nervous, and then you get nervous. It's a verb that captures the moment of transition. And what's beautiful about this pattern is how naturally it mirrors real life. Our moods and bodies are always moving, always adjusting, and English uses get as a simple way to narrate those shifts without drama or complexity.
Yeah, and it shows how conversational English prefers emotional efficiency. Instead of saying, I become tired, which sounds stiff and distant, we say, I get tired, and suddenly the sentence feels personal. It feels like something you'd say to a friend. That's an important distinction, because spoken language isn't just about transmitting information, it's about connection. When someone says, I get nervous before meetings, you immediately understand the feeling. It's relatable. It's everyday vulnerability expressed in everyday words.
And this pattern extends into so many parts of daily storytelling. You get hungry after a long day. You get cold when the window is open. You get excited when you make plans. These aren't dramatic statements, they're small observations about being alive. Native speakers use get here because it keeps the focus on the experience, not the grammar. The verb disappears into the background, letting the emotion come forward.
I think that's why this usage is so important for learners who want to sound natural. When you talk about how you feel using get, your English immediately feels more conversational. It stops sounding translated. You're no longer building sentences from a rulebook, you're describing reactions in real time. And that's what conversation is, reacting to life as it happens. You wake up and get sleepy. You hear good news and get happy. You deal with stress and get overwhelmed. Another place where get quietly dominates everyday English is when we talk about movement, specifically the moment we reach a destination. In textbooks, learners are often introduced to the verb arrive, and technically that word is correct. But in real life, in casual conversation, native speakers lean heavily toward get. We say we get home, we get to work, we get to school, we get there late. It's softer, faster, and more conversational. And the interesting thing is most native speakers don't even notice they're choosing it.
Yeah, and there's something very practical about this choice. Arrive sounds precise and formal, almost like an announcement in an airport. It belongs in writing, schedules, or official contexts. But daily conversation prefers verbs that feel lived in. When someone asks, "What time did you get home?" it sounds warm and personal, like they're asking about your day, not logging data. And that warmth matters.
And you hear this pattern constantly when people talk about routines. Someone might say they get to work around 9, get back home around 6, and get there early if traffic is light. It's a smooth way of narrating movement through the day. You're not just stating facts, you're describing your flow through space. English uses get almost like a bridge between locations, marking the transition from being on the way to being there.
What's helpful for learners is realizing that this pattern is incredibly forgiving. You don't need complex sentence structures to describe schedules or travel. You can build a whole story using simple get phrases. I got to the station late, got on the train just in time, and got home exhausted. That sentence carries timing, movement, and emotion, all powered by the same small verb.
And once you start listening for this in movies or podcasts, it becomes impossible to ignore. You'll notice how often people rely on get to talk about arriving somewhere. That awareness is powerful because it shifts your learning from memorization to recognition. Instead of forcing the verb into your speech, you begin absorbing it naturally. And when a pattern becomes familiar through exposure, using it feels effortless.
One of my favorite uses of get is when it means understand. It's so casual and friendly, but at the same time, it's incredibly powerful. Think about a moment when something suddenly clicks in your head. Maybe you've been reading instructions, listening to a story, or following a conversation, and then boom, you get it. That instant recognition, that aha moment, is exactly what get captures in English. And the amazing thing is, it's not just about facts.
Exactly. And it's different from saying, I understand, which is grammatically correct, sure, but it can feel formal or a little stiff in everyday conversation. Saying, I get it, immediately softens the tone. It's like nodding to a friend and saying, yeah, I know what you mean, all in 2 short words. And the beauty of it is that it can carry empathy too. You can say, I get why you're frustrated, or I get why that made you happy, and instantly the other person feels heard and understood.
Another thing I love about this usage is how naturally it fits into dialogue. When someone explains a joke or a tricky situation, you don't need to pause and say, now I comprehend. You just say, oh, I get it, and the conversation moves forward. It's smooth, quick, and real. And if you're asking a question, you can check comprehension naturally too. Do you get it? It's polite, casual, and completely normal in spoken English.
And this pattern is also forgiving. Sometimes you might hear it as I got it in the past tense, or I don't get it when something is confusing. All of these forms are flexible and easy to use, which makes them perfect for learners. Instead of worrying about complex expressions like I have comprehended the instructions, you can rely on get to communicate the same meaning naturally. That's why listening for this pattern is so important. Once you hear it often enough, it becomes instinctive. Alright, so now that we've talked about the main meanings of get, let's dive into some common phrases you'll hear every single day. These are phrases that use get in a very natural, habitual way, and once you start recognizing them, your English will suddenly feel a lot more fluent. Think of them as small building blocks you can use in almost any conversation. The first one is get up, which simply means to wake up or leave your bed in the morning. So, for example, I get up at 7 every weekday, but on weekends I usually get up late. It's a tiny phrase, but it appears in so many daily stories and routines.
Yeah, and what I love about get up is how human it feels. You can describe your own morning habits, or you can ask someone else, what time do you usually get up? Suddenly, you're having a natural conversation about daily life. And it's flexible too. You can say, I barely got up on time today, or I got up feeling tired, but then my coffee helped.
Exactly. Another one is get back, which means to return somewhere. You get back home from work, get back from a trip, get back to school. For example, I get back home around 6, and I always collapse on the sofa for a few minutes. That phrase carries both movement and the rhythm of daily life. And learners sometimes forget it, but it's super common, because people are always talking about where they go and when they return.
And then there's get ready, which is all about preparation. It can be for anything, a meeting, a party, a workout, even just leaving the house. You could say, I need to get ready for the party tonight, or I got ready quickly because I was running late. This one is really fun because it's so visual. Anyone listening can imagine you putting on clothes, fixing your hair, gathering your things.
And of course, one of my favorites is get better, which can mean recovering from illness or improving at a skill. For example, I hope you get better soon, or I'm getting better at English every day. This phrase has a positive vibe and can even motivate learners. When you say, I get better about something, it's like celebrating small progress, and that's exactly the kind of mindset that helps you learn English naturally.
Finally, there's get along, which is all about relationships. You can say, I get along with my coworkers, or do you get along with your neighbors? It's simple, but it communicates how people feel about their interactions. And it's very human, because so much of life is about connecting with others. Learning this phrase helps you describe your social world in a natural way.
And here's the fun part, you can combine these phrases into little stories. Like, I got up late, got ready quickly, got on the bus, got back home, and by the evening I got better at cooking this new recipe. Suddenly, you're telling a full day's story using one small verb over and over, and it feels completely natural.
Exactly. And once you start hearing these patterns in conversations, podcasts, or videos, you'll notice how often English relies on these simple verbs to carry complex meaning. It's not about memorizing dozens of synonyms, it's about seeing how one word adapts to many situations. And that's really the secret to sounding fluent without forcing yourself to learn everything at once.
All right, now it's your turn. Let's slow down for a moment and practice using get in real situations. Don't worry about perfection, just focus on feeling the word in your mouth and noticing how natural it sounds. For example, think about your morning routine. What do you get in the morning? Maybe you get coffee, or you get breakfast, or you get a quick moment of quiet before the day starts. You can say it out loud, I get coffee at 7 every morning, or I get breakfast and read the news. The goal here isn't to memorize sentences, it's to start feeling how get moves inside conversation.
And you can take it even further. Think about changes in your day, feelings, energy, or moods. For example, I get tired after work, or I get excited when I see my friends. You can also talk about movement, I get home at 6, or I get to the park every Sunday. And don't forget understanding, I finally get how this recipe works, or I get what my friend meant yesterday. Just play with the word. Use it in tiny stories about your life. The more you do this, the more automatic it will feel.
One thing I love about this kind of practice is how it mirrors real life. You're not learning English in isolation, you're talking about yourself, your day, your feelings, your interactions. That makes every sentence memorable. And even if you make mistakes, that's perfect. Mistakes are part of learning. In fact, that's exactly how you get better. Every time you use the word, you're reinforcing the patterns we talked about, receiving, becoming, arriving, understanding. You're building muscle memory for real English.
And remember, learning a word like get isn't about using it perfectly every time. It's about comfort. Feeling confident when it pops up in conversation. And because get appears everywhere, mastering it is like unlocking a secret key. Suddenly, listening becomes easier, your speech feels smoother, and you start participating in real conversations instead of translating every word in your head.
So before we finish, here's a little challenge for you. Over the next day, try noticing every time you hear or use get. When you wake up, notice it. When you talk to friends or watch a video, notice it. Every time it appears, pause for a moment and think, oh, I get it. That's exactly how it works here. These tiny moments of recognition are incredibly powerful. They train your brain to absorb English naturally, without stress or force.
And that's the magic of real conversation English. You don't need perfect grammar or long vocabulary lists. You just need exposure, awareness, and a few flexible words, like get. With practice, your confidence grows. Your English becomes fluid. And each small step brings you closer to speaking naturally.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into one tiny, powerful word. Remember, language learning is a journey. Don't rush it. Enjoy it. Use it. Laugh with it. Make mistakes. Celebrate small wins. And keep practicing, because every time you use English in real life, you're getting better, step by step, day by day.
Exactly. And if you liked today's episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll keep bringing you more relaxed, real English conversations, tips, and stories that actually make sense in daily life. Keep listening, keep speaking, and most importantly, keep enjoying English.
Keep smiling, and keep getting better. See you next time.